This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
Glad to have you here with us on the Retirement Solution with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital. He and his team are here working every day to help all the folks that come into the office figure out all the things that is required of us now. We don't have to do it by ourselves. That's the thing. But when it comes to figuring out your retirement plan, there is a lot to consider. There's also just a lot more time than generations past have experienced. That's another really relevant issue that we probably haven't addressed as much. It's like there's a lot to plan for, but there's a lot more time to plan for as well, John, in these years ahead. So figuring it all out, putting it all into a plan customized to you is where we want to start. RetirementSolutionRadio.com is where you can go to begin. We also have links posted in the show notes, or again, find us anytime, RetirementSolutionRadio.com. Found this interesting article that I wanted to bring up to you because the idea, listen, we all work very, very hard. We all would love to have lots of money. Where you get to a point with how much you have is one thing, but I think that probably a lot of people very rarely sit down and do the math on how much money has actually come into their accounts, into their life over however in a short span of time or a long span of time, but how much they actually end up with, because the spending is the easy part.
Oh, absolutely.
if the saving was the easy part, a lot of us would have a lot more saved.
Absolutely.
So there was this article from Business Insider talking about 5 things that wealthy people consistently do to stay wealthy. And that's what I wanted to ask you about because, I mean, you see it all the time. You see both sides of the spectrum.
Absolutely. You know, I've always been amazed at sometimes the people that have the highest incomes are not even remotely close to the wealthiest people I run into. And other times, people that have had, I'm going to honestly say, very low-paying career jobs, but they have been masterful in how they've saved and how they've invested. I will never forget. There was a gentleman that I met years ago. Didn't become a client, but he actually had worked and maintained a cemetery.
Interesting.
In the eastern part of the state of Kentucky for his entire life. He was like 74 years old. I think he said he never made more than $38,000 a year in doing this job, and his wife never worked. When I met him, he was trying to figure out if he could retire. He had over $3.5 million saved.
Come on.
He had basically just put it all away. For the longest period of time, he only owned CDs and bank insured accounts, and then he dabbled just a little bit and bought quote unquote high quality mutual funds and never messed with them. And that gentleman who never made more than $38,000 a year, from his words, had over $3.5 million. And he's talking to me and he's just like, "Hey John, you think I can retire?" I'm like, "Dude, do you still live the same way that you have?"
Obviously, if you never made more than that and his wife didn't work.
Right. And he goes, "Well, yeah, I mean, we still save." And I'm like, "My man, you are fine.
Yeah.
You are fine to do whatever you want." And it blew his mind because he was a great saver, right? And then I can talk to people all the time and they're unbelievably successful, but they, have a lifestyle that, reflects some of that success. They have really nice cars and unbelievable houses, and they take very awesome vacations, and they're doing great. They're not going to go broke anytime soon. But they don't have the same percentage of their money saved as well at the same time. But I think about it all the time. What makes someone seem wealthy versus what is wealthy? And one of the things that I've always looked at is, the people that are well above me on the success rate, like unbelievably just successful people that are worth like $250 million or $1 billion or $10 billion. It's like, what do these people do? And you find out a lot of them, the way they acquired their money, they sold a part of a business or they invested well. It's not as much people that inherited it from their parents or grandparents. There's a ton of that. You get the Hiltons out there. You got the Kennedys. You got some people that do that, but a lot of people, they were products of a roaring 90s and 2000s, and they worked hard. They invested well. And then they sold out of part of a company and they made a lot of money. But where I want to go with that is the things that these people do are different than the way that we're trained as individuals, the way that we're trained to, hey, you can do this on your own at E-Trade, America, whatever these things do. You can be your own captain of your future. Yeah, you can. We all can. We all can. But here's the amazing thing. So there were 5 things in this article that I had looked at on what people do differently. I didn't disagree with a single one of them. Number 1, they have a financial plan and they stick to it. Number 2, They do not worry about their investments, and they don't manage or change them often. I agree with both of those. Number 3, they have over-planned for retirement. So they know when they might turn on an income, when they could sell that beach house. They've already thought about that.
Yeah.
And it's not a material thing to them, but they overplan. They just make certain, hey, if things go wrong, what do I have to back me up? If things go right, what would I do with that extra? Would we gift more? Would we give more to our church? Would we create a foundation? What would we do? But all those things. So they overplan for retirement. Number 4, they find ways to reduce taxes. That is huge. The more you make, the better off you do. And if you're a 100 millionaire or a billionaire, guys, you're in the highest bracket. And for most of those folks, it's about 50%.
Yeah.
Every dollar you make, you're going to have to give some government, whether federal, state, local, sales tax, you're going to have to give roughly half of it away. So you get 50 cents of every dollar. So is it important to try to protect yourself from taxes? Yes, it is. Unbelievably. So much different than if we're in the 12 or 15% tax bracket. You get to keep 85 cents of every dollar if you're in the 15% tax bracket versus 50 cents. Big difference. So they find ways to reduce taxes, and they incorporate charitable giving into the retirement plan. Those 5 things I think are unbelievably awesome. The 2 that I want to focus on right now, I'm going to have to change your paradigm of thinking out there for most of us.
Okay.
Because it's exactly opposite. I mean, materially opposite of what we've been told.
Yeah.
The things that I read, things you need to look at your investments and analyze them quarterly or on a monthly basis. You need to make sure that you're picking only the best stocks that are great for momentum or growth or value, depending on the market.
Okay.
See how stupid that actually is when you think about, is that what the wealthiest people do? No. If wealthy people, they're like, you know what? I think Microsoft and Apple and Amazon and Google, take your pick, whatever they come up with, right? I think those are good companies. And I think as they go, the United States economy is going to go. So I'm going to buy those. I'm going to own them. And I'm going to leave them alone. Because frankly, those guys know what they're doing because they've made hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars over the last 20 years. And as long as they seem like it's a good holding, why not hold them? Now, I'm not telling everyone to go buy individual stocks. But if you look at very successful people, it's usually individual stocks or very inexpensive exchange traded funds that own the things that make sense, right? Like Vanguard Growth Fund, Schwab Growth Index, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying anyone should get that or not, but those are really attractive investments that not only would we may want to own our whole lifetime, they become a generational asset, especially if you own like a quality, low-cost growth exchange traded fund. And why do I say ETF, exchange traded fund, instead of a mutual fund? Well, they're very tax efficient. You can get a step up in cost basis. They do not have phantom income taxes, and they are unbelievably cheap to own. And you can hedge them on the downside, which means that if things go the wrong direction, you can automatically have the system sell you out of them. You can choose to do any of those things. And they are amazingly great at wealth transfer. Because if every year, let's say that fund owns the 50 fastest growing companies that have a certain size in the entire United States, every year that changes, it changes. Mm-hmm. If Facebook is no longer good, or Meta, whatever they call it now, is no longer good, guess what? It falls out of the top 50. What goes in? Maybe Eli Lilly, maybe Merck, maybe Bristol Myers Squibb, maybe Berkshire Hathaway. But it's automatically doing that for us, and that's basically zero cost. I mean, it's super low cost.
Got it.
I mean, less than 0.1% a year. So those are great. So when you own those things and you stick with it, you don't need to worry about all that non-stuff. They say, well, you can do your own research and analysis. I mean, come on, guys. There were only six stocks that have led the entire upswing of the S&P 500 this whole year.
Right.
Are you going to pick those six stocks? I'm not going to lie to you. You won't. You're not going to pick all six because they're not the same six as they were last year, which aren't the same 6 or 7 or 12 the year before. So why not just own the quality index that does that for us, right? It's so simple.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, that takes care of having a financial plan and sticking with it and then maneuvering our investments.
Okay.
And guys, that goes exactly opposite of what we've been told to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can do all of your own stock screening, all that. Guys, it's a waste of time. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I am plugged into this industry. I watch this stuff every day. And what I've learned over time is, to quote a phrase from Jack Bogle, who's the founder of Vanguard. He said when he was early on in his career on Wall Street, and he was ticked off because they wouldn't let him have a seat at the table. He hated those guys because they acted like they were the captains of industry and he was a peon. Mm-hmm. He said one of the guys came up to him and said, "Hey, Jack, let me tell you something. Ain't no one here know nothing." And he didn't click, that moment.
Yeah.
But a few minutes later, he realized what the guy was saying is, don't act like these people are titans of industry and captains of the world. They don't know what's going to happen any better than you do, man.
Yep.
So you just have to have a good feeling. You have to do your research and fundamentals. But realistically, once you make a good choice, stick with it. So when it comes in our office, what we do, and this is very, very in tune to what the richest people do, when we think about how much protection we want in our portfolio, for instance, if someone says, John, I'm kind of risk averse. I really don't like the chance. I really don't like to lose. I mean, I want to have some money in like NVIDIA or Microsoft, but realistically, I want a lot of it safe. Well, that's the very first thing we do. Let's work on protection. How much of your money do you truly want safe? I want 75% of my money totally safe. Awesome. We can do that. Which means if things go very wrong, we're only talking about 25% of your portfolio.
Right.
So that makes it very comfortable, right?
Right.
The second thing is that what kind of income can we create with that level of protection?
Okay.
And believe it or not, just because of where we are in this world, the more protection you have, the more consistent income you can create.
Got
so
it.
it just happens to go that, hey, if you like to a little bit more safety nets, a little bit more security, that generally will pay us more income over time, at least right now, than any other investment out there. It may not grow as much, and that's to be expected because we're taking a lot more safety. But it works that way, right?
Right.
And so when you take those two things in and look at number 3 on our 5 pillars list, number 3 is tax advantages. So when you think about what the wealthiest people do, we've been doing that in our firm for a decade. We want to make certain that, hey, we know how much safety nets that we want in place. We know how much income we can produce. We're not going to tinker with it all the time. Not even annually. We're going to monitor it every day, but that's only against what the clients want to achieve. Make sure that we're still on path to hit those goals.
Okay.
And then we look at the tax savings, and there was a gentleman that came the other day, and we were looking at it. He makes a really good amount of income, but he was worried that when he retires, he's not going to have enough. Our CPA was able to sit down and find a way to save him $189,000 this year in 2024 by itself.
Wow.
This is money that he had paid in the previous several years that they were able to save him on the spot. And the crazy thing is that we projected this over the next 5 or 6 years. What if he only worked for 1 or 2 and we still maintain this type of diligent and vigilant tax structure? He might save over $1 million over the course of his lifetime. So here we are taking a gentleman that is a multimillionaire and finding a way to not only save money today, but then also find a way to do it in the future. Guys, those are 3 big ones. That's why we don't have to worry so much about the rest of it. The rich don't do it. Why wouldn't and why shouldn't we learn from them? If those are the things that you want to employ, not looking at the Wall Street Journal every day or listening to CNBC or doing the hottest stock picks from Jim Cramer, unfortunately, that's what the masses do. And if you look at what most mass investors do in their portfolio, it ain't that good. There's a study called the Dalbar study that proves that.
Want to be wealthy? Why not do what the wealthy do? Seems like a great place to start. And obviously, John and his team at J. Hagan Capital here to help you get started in that plan. You can find us retirementsolutionradio.com, or you can also click on the show notes, the links we have posted in the show notes, I should say rather, that will take you to the website, which is again, retirementsolutionradio.com.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with John Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with John and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to John's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Inc. is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. It does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital. National license number 1882794.